Hey y'all, welcome back to Poplar Creek Farm. Today is a beautiful November 3rd. It is actually like 50 something degrees out right now. The first part of this video was shot a couple days ago when we got our very first snowfall. So we go from snow and like highs in low 40s, high 30s, back to the 50s. It's crazy. The weather is so all over the place right now, but that's kind of typical for New York for fall. But this is the time of year when I really start to reflect and look back at my gardening season and look back at my season of growing animals, even, raising out our livestock and deciding what needs to be changed, what we can do better, what more we can grow, what I want to grow less of, changes that I want to make in my preservation, the preservation that I've done. I start looking at what I have done and what I want to be able to do in the future. And I really start reflecting and realizing what needs to change, which is, I think, a really good thing. It's one of those things that it gives you perspective to look back at this time of year and say, okay, we have way too much of this, or not nearly enough of this, or this we could have done better. With me in this gardening season, I really struggled with weeds. I struggled with time management. If you've been watching for a while, you know that I was doing my farm as more of a business farm instead of a homestead, and realizing that just wasn't for me. It wasn't going to work for my family. And switching more to like a homestead style is so much better. We are not going to be doing our business at all anymore. Everything we produce is going to be for us or friends and family. And with that, it's going to give me a lot more freedom and time to do the things that I want to do, which is important. But a couple really positive things from this year, even though it was a struggle of a year for me, it was really difficult. A couple really positive things were I preserved so much food. So many things that I have struggled to preserve in the past, I was able to do this year. And that's because I decided really early on in the season, it was around July 4th actually, that my husband and I really had the conversation of, we need to change this. This isn't working for our family. What can we do differently? And we realized the farm business wasn't working. And that's when I changed the mindset of, okay, I don't care what I sell at this point. I need to focus on producing for my family. So every tomato that came out of the garden ended up preserved for us or eaten by us. So I preserved over 40 quarts of spaghetti sauce. I preserved, 20 something pints of salsa, pizza sauce, ketchup, whole and half tomatoes. I preserved so much food. I preserved so many green beans. I think I'm gonna have green beans coming out my ears for years, which is amazing. So currently we're eating our freezer green beans first, because those are ones that'll potentially go bad sooner than the canned ones. Sometimes, although I did, blanch them and freeze them and put them in Ziploc freezer bags, sometimes they will get like freezer burn if the bag breaks at all, the seal breaks, anything like that. So we'll be working through those, and then we'll go to the canned ones, but I can grow less next year because I don't need as many. I grew so many this year, and I preserved so many. Drying beans, though, we struggled with because the weeds got out of control, and so they didn't have good airflow to dry on the vine properly. I planted a ton, and I really harvested very minimal compared to what I planted. So next year I want to do a ton more of that. That's a huge food security preservation food for me. Drying beans are something that you don't have to can. You can just let them, as long as they're fully dry, you can put them in a jar, put them in a container, and I'm gonna put oxygen absorbers and things just to be safe, but they're shelf stable. Potatoes are another thing that I struggled with this year. We grew a ton of potatoes. We planted a ton of potatoes, and I got about the amount that I planted, which sucks. But it is what it is. Going forward, we know my parents' land is not good for potatoes. Their soil stays very wet. And a lot of the plants were just, the potatoes underneath were just mush. And honestly, their soil is not very fertile. And so we won't be planting up there at all anymore, at least for the next couple of years. We're not going to be planting there because we're going to focus on our food production here. And potatoes are something that I really want to make sure we grow a lot more of here and actually grow effectively. Because again, that's a huge food security thing for me. And I'll say this, I homestead with the mindset of preparation, food preparation for if something were to happen. I do not homestead in fear, but I always have food security and self-sufficiency kind of in mind when I am growing things and when I'm planting things, because I want to make sure that if something were to ever happen, my family can eat. That is first and foremost on my list of priorities. Winter squash is another thing that I struggled to grow. Again, we grew that up with my parents, and their land is not very fertile, but also we didn't get up there. I didn't have time. I could barely keep up with my own garden, let alone time to keep up with their garden, or gardening up there. And so, winter squash, that again is a great thing for food security, I didn't grow much of at all. So we plan on growing a lot more of that next year. Peppers, those struggled as well. I really struggled. My garden was very infertile this year. My garden struggled. Very compact soil. It was a very dry start to the season, and I struggled. I think I didn't add enough compost, so I didn't add enough nutrition for the plants, and they just struggled because of it, and they got a really rough start, and they stunted and all the things. They got choked out by weeds. There's a million and one things, but I'm really changing what I'm doing because we're going to use woven weed fabric in the future, because it just gives me a little bit of more control with less effort. I have a 15,000 square foot garden, and I am one person. I also have my kids at home, and I still work some as a nurse. So I cannot manage my 15,000 square foot garden by myself without the assistance of things like woven weed fabric. So that's going to be a huge thing going forward. And taking the time to reflect and really look back and say, it's okay to use these things, because for so long I was like, oh, I'm a failure because I'm going to use this. This is cheating almost. No, it's saying I can't do it all, and that's okay. I still want to grow food, but I can't do it all by myself. My husband helps me so much. Honestly, he harvested a good amount of the produce this year. He harvested the majority of the tomatoes for me, and he will do anything to help me. But I don't expect him to manage the garden when that's my thing, and I love it. I love managing it, but I also just can't do it all. I want to spend time with my kids, and I want to enjoy my time with them while they're young, and that's important to me. So a lot of change is coming, but I think this time of year is that time to look back at your season and say, this is what I did right, this is what I did wrong, this is what I want to change, and really reflect on that, which helps also motivate you and get you excited for the next season. Because although I am just getting over the burnout of this past season, I need to rest, recuperate, and then get motivated, or else everything kind of goes, you'll struggle the next year if you don't allow that rest and reflection to be able to get excited again. So yeah, I'm really reflecting and really looking back and saying, what can I do better? What can I do different? Meat production was great this year. We don't need any pork for quite a while. I'm hoping maybe, if it depends. So if our one gilt that has not gotten bred, we have now a gilt and a sow. Our pig Isabella, our Idaho pasture pig, did farrow, and she had 9 healthy piglets. They're wonderful. Our other pig, who is still a gilt, has not been able to get bred. And if she doesn't get bred, we will process her, and then that will be our pork for the year. We don't need any more. We don't need to raise out feeders for the next year. We have tons of pork right now anyways. But that will be our one for the year otherwise. And because we will, we'll process her for ourselves. Chicken production wise, we did great. We produced more than enough. Right now for chicken, we were able to piece some, get breast, legs, thighs, things like that. We ground some chicken. We have plenty of whole chickens. My husband hunts, so that is where a lot of our red meat comes from, is venison. But then we also are getting half a cow from our neighbor just up the road. Bartering is wonderful. We are going to pay for some of that cow, but we have watched their animals, so we will have a reduced price. So bartering is really a wonderful way to be able to fulfill our needs, our meat needs for the year. So I think meat-wise, we are where we need to be. And honestly, even above and beyond where we need to be, which is wonderful. It's more of the garden where we need to really grow more, and then the fruit trees. fruit trees I plan on moving over the next couple weeks. I'm going to move them all where we have them now on our hill. Our soil is extremely compact. There's really no nutrition, and we've lost a couple trees to that. So I'm going to move them into a location that is a little bit softer soil, a little bit more fertile, nutritious soil, in hopes that they really are able to start flourishing and we are able to start harvesting over the next couple of years. Although this year was a bumper crop for our neighborhood that we're getting the beef from for their apples, and we were able to put up a ton of applesauce and things and eat tons of apples fresh and everything, which was really wonderful. So although we didn't produce it, we were able to get it very local, just down the road, and for no cost at all, which was wonderful. So we still have a long ways to go to be what I would consider, able to survive on what we produce, but we're getting there. And every year we're getting closer, and every year we're producing more, and every year we're preserving more, because that's a big thing, is not letting anything go to waste. And we will get there to if something were to happen, we could survive level. It may not be a thriving level. We may always need to purchase things to be able to thrive. But I want to get to a point of where we can really produce as much as we would need if something were to happen. Again, I don't homestead out of fear, but I do like to be prepared if something were to happen. So thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Let me know how you guys are reflecting and what changes you plan on making in your garden, homestead, animal production, whatever the case may be. Let me know, because it helps me look back at things and say, okay, this is, yeah, I should have done that differently too. So remember, guys, we're growing today for a better tomorrow. Please like and subscribe and join me on the next one.